Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel, where my camera is still working for the moment anyway, but that can change anytime. And yet I still have a more reliable stream than the one that fucking Ron DeSantis used to announce his horrible presidential campaign. So there's that. Right, and we're gonna play a little Civilization 6 as soon as I actually get everything the way I need it to be. Okay, here we go. Okay, game is about to start. And let's see. Get a little bit of music
I tuoi
going.
valorosi cavalieri. E
It's just gonna take a second to load, and I need to hydrate a bit, as I've been talking rather a lot today. Okay, playing as Korea this time. Just recently had China declare war on us, but that seems to have died down at this point. It is 10:25 CE, and actually, just adjust camera exposure is low. Pura il video. Hang on. There, that's a little bit better. And yeah. Now I don't quite look like I'm broadcasting from the depths of hell, do I, chat? Just a little bit. As I said, my camera may freeze, and if it does, it will almost certainly do so on the absolutely least flattering freeze frame it could come up with. So I'll be keeping an eye out for that so I can restart the damn thing. How's everybody getting on, chat? Okay. Mostly at the moment, I'm just trying to get production working. Ah, hola Phoenix, g'day. Ah, I'm not bad, and you? Oh god, okay, what was the tweet? Have you got a link to the tweet? We can all vomit with you. By the way, a little fun fact. The whole debt ceiling thing is a colossal bipartisan bluff. The US Constitution actually makes it a legal impossibility for the US to default. Section 4 of the 14th Amendment. So if the US were ever to fail to pay on sovereign debt, it would end up getting paid anyway because, yeah, the creditor would go to court. I mean, the whole thing is just so ridiculous. Okay, yeah, why not? President's Sunday, that name is like vaguely familiar. Okay. I was gonna say, when I heard the phrase "my fellow leftists," I was thinking maybe vaguely in Bush's orbit. Seems like a sort of a Bushy thing to say. Ah, Buenos Aires is attacking somebody. Ah, Japan. Japan and Buenos Aires are at war. Okay, yes, good point. And thank you for remembering that, because I had not actually remembered that. Molti discutono sull'inizio effettivo dell'epoca medievale, ma tu sai che è stato quando la Corea ha scoperto la tecnologia staffe. So we just discovered stirrups. So,
Poche invenzioni sono semplici come la stampa.
wait, I thought I'd change that. Just let me know when it's in there. Okay, so we've got a new technology. What's... do some bit of engineering won't hurt. Yes, one of Japan's cities decided they wanted to be part of Korea instead. So I now am the proud owner of Gifu. Okay, Chonju. What? No, what shall we put in Chonju? A commercial center. Snodo commerciale.
Una marina potente non è una provocazione alla guerra, ma
Okay, feudalism. We're gonna have some feudalism. New mode of production. Okay, let me see. Oh god, this is like the. That is so fucking Vosh. To be an asshole about ableism. I mean, it's like. Here, let me just put it up here. So we can all see and groan. PSA for my fellow leftists who incredibly still feel so inclined. We do not have the political currency or social cachet to waste our and other people's time and attention policing the use of words like crazy or stupid. Make peace with this. It's like, wait, okay, first of all, who's we? Because clearly there is no we around the opposition to ableism that this is opposing. This is a pro-ableism post. But what's the? I mean, what political currency or social cachet does it take? I mean, we see to waste our another. He seems to be uncertain whether he's saying that it takes too much time, or we need a certain amount of political currency or social cachet to take mental health disabilities seriously and oppose people being shat on for having them. Like, what a just absolute nonsense take that is. That's just wow. That is garbagical. That is just truly garbagical. Ugh. And thank you to my camera for not freeze framing on that. That would have been nice. You freeze framing on that. It's been freeze framing on some of my shittier facial expressions. Oh, no worries. I was busy deciding to research feudalism. Just such a weird way to put it in this game. Yeah, I mean, what's the point of that take? Except, I mean, what he's really saying here is he's annoyed at the fact that people point out that he says problematic things, and so he's decided what's really problematic. You know, he turns a chair backwards, sits on it. You know, you communist youth pastor shit. Oh, well, of course, that's what cats are for. If cats do not steal seats, then what are they for? And says, yeah, you know what's really problematic, though? Caring about that. Maybe we actually lose social currency and political cachet when we say that we're kind of okay with slagging off people with mental health issues? Ok, luogo santo. Piazza del teatro. Oh, no, hang on. Have we got any wonders? Petra. We're gonna have a Petra. That way, centuries later, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade can be shot there. President Sunday. Is that a reference to something? Oh, let's see. Any of these people I've even heard of. Two guys talking history. The Affromentator. Wait, the worst video essay on you. There's no way that that's the. And here we go. Here's somebody actually talking about about reverse racism. This is the sort of this is this great service to the left that that Vosh has been doing, like actively undermining and any meaningful understanding of what racism is. Jesus. Wow, how anti-white racism perpetuates white supremacy. The fact that you acknowledge that white supremacy exists already contradicts the notion that reverse racism is a meaningful fucking concept. I see, as somebody who regularly has itches I can never scratch, that's a powerful hex. I wish you the best of luck with it. You know, one thing I'm thinking in the midst of this existential crises, these various existential crises that don't even have the decency to wait until one of them is sorted before showing up. I think there is amongst leftists there's sort of a thought process that I think it would probably be useful to change. I'm not and now to be clear, I'm not criticizing anyone. I think this is something that we all do to some extent, which is to look at things like the fucking transgenocide shit, the ongoing uncontrolled public health disaster of a pandemic shit, the climate change shit. You know, all of this fucking shit that is constantly getting piled on, and who knows what'll come next week. You know, and you know what we tend to do is say, what can we do about it? Which is an understandable response, but the thing is that the fact is, with our polling power as it is currently, what we can do about it tends to be very little. And the trouble with asking just what can we do about it is that it actually forecloses options without realizing it. I think it would make a lot more sense, and we might be able to make a lot more headway, if instead of asking just, you know, what can we do about it, ask what needs to happen. What needs to happen in order to say that there's like an to have an acceptable result? And you get detailed about that. You say, like, let's say with these genocidal trans exterminationist laws that apply now to over 60% of the surface area of the continental United States. I went through and calculated that the other night. And you say, okay, well, what needs to happen is they need to be gone. The bare minimum is they need to be gone, and there needs to be and there needs to be no prospect of them ever coming back. And what needs to happen there is a lot of things, but it mostly comes down to attacking governability and attacking profitability. They have to be made to it has to become clear that these laws aren't worth the paper they're written on, because enforcing them will cause every single time a massive unholy clusterfuck that will be extremely disruptive and completely undermine the idea that this is just some sort of nice common sense genocide that they're carrying out. And non-compliance has to take the form of various things. And then the question is, once you've got a detailed idea, that is not complete by any means, I'm just giving an example here. And once you've got a clear idea, what needs to happen, you have that clear understanding, then you compare that to our current capabilities, and you try to and you identify the gap. And once you've identified that gap, then you can start to identify how to go about filling it. What would we need to be doing in order to bring ourselves from the situation where we are, where we can't really do a lot of the stuff that needs to happen, to being in a situation where we can do at least some of it, or all of it. And it's a recursive process, and you can do it with pretty much any single problem, any single, issue that is, that exists. And unlike what can we do, which just leads to, a sort of a lamentation of our limited capabilities and pulling power, what needs to happen and what is the gap between us that separates us from being able to make that happen actually gives room to be very specific and deliberate about building capabilities, building our ability, about building our building organization, building, effective disobedience, things like, like with the horrible fucking bathroom bullshit that they're doing in Florida, for example. I mean, one thing that comes to mind is normalizing de-arrests. Normalizing, so that's not just a protest thing anymore. That's just, that's just what happens. Somebody sees somebody being dragged out of a public toilet, a trans person being dragged out of a public toilet. They just do whatever. They make sure that they can escape, by interfering. But that it means breaking a number of habits and training skills and stuff like that, so people understand how to do it. But the more you do that, the more you have, the more you understand where we're lacking in capabilities and what capabilities need to be built in order to be able to do the things that absolutely fucking need to happen. The better off we'll be, because it generates lists that allow us to really focus on the things we need in order to really be revolutionary organizations that are actually building the kind of counterpower that we need in order to actually get someplace. And so, I mean, that's just a thought I've been having that I've been trying to articulate for a while. Wish these younger, able-bodied people who claim to be leftists would actually get out there and pull some of that weight. Yeah, I've been a direct and vocal about, if you say you're leftist, prove it, get off your butt and get out into your community, meet people, get to know your neighbors. Yeah, I mean, and of course, I have to say, as a person who is really, really horrible about, I am an absolute non-mingler, I have to say I'm not great at that. There are a lot of things, a lot of ways in which I can make myself useful, but going out on my own and talking to random people who don't know me and have absolutely no idea why I'm there, that is, like, that just doubles my blood pressure immediately just thinking about it. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that it seems to me absolutely needs to happen in order to have any kind of chance against these fucking laws is for, liberal cis allies need to understand the stakes and need to understand that if, this would be put up or shut up time. That this would be the time where they actually do what allies do, which is to actually be willing to share some of the fucking risk in order when an ally is under attack. Yeah. Yeah, I've done canvassing, well, I did canvassing in a very, sort of special situation, actually. I helped out with canvassing when I was in Ireland, in the run-up to the 8th Amendment referendum. I was visiting friends, and all of my friends, basically everyone I knew, was involved in the campaign, and everybody was canvassing, and I thought, it would be really cool to, I'd love to help out with this. This is it's a historic fucking moment. The 8th Amendment is the one that was banning abortion, and they repealed it in a referendum several years ago. And I'd heard, and I wanted to get a sense of just the sort of the mood, which is a great thing about canvassing. And I was actually okay on that, but the thing was, it was in my entire campaigning history, it was unique in the sense that everybody fucking loved us, with like one or two exceptions, and you know, maybe a couple of ambivalent people. But other than that, if you had like a yes or in Irish "tá" pin on your person, random people would be like, "Hey, good to see you. You're with the campaign. You know, I was waiting for my literature to get there. I sent in my application to join up with you guys, and we hadn't had a chance." It was like I've never been in a situation where I'm in a public-facing campaigning role at all, and everybody just fucking loves me. Usually, it's the other way around. Like the last time I really did a lot of that was around the Cincinnati civil rights boycott back in like 2001. And fucking hell. I mean, yeah, there were some people who actually loved us. And then there were all these fucking like bougie ass white people who absolutely fucking detested us. And City Hall wanted to shit on us from a great height. Took us to court, actually, and he got humiliated. They took us to court trying to just wreck the campaign with a ridiculous tortious interference suit, and they lost so bad that that the settlement that they ultimately agreed to gave us city property to carry out meetings explaining why the Cincinnati boycott was the right thing to do and why our demands were completely reasonable. And that experience was very different because it was interactions with a lot of fairly hostile people, because it was like these like upper middle class of just rich white people coming downtown to the Aronoff Center or whatever to watch a play or something like that, and we would be there saying, no, you need to boycott the city because there's just the place is a civil rights disaster and we've got all these reasonable demands, and here they are, and people would be like, yeah, fuck you, and just walk right past it. But I mean, so I've done it, I kind of can do it, but I have a lot of anxiety around it. I mean, it's the same thing with being on the phone. I'm actually remarkably effective. I mean, it surprises me every time on the phone, and I hate being on the phone. I will do just about anything to avoid being on the phone. But yeah, so series of thoughts over, and with that, it is time to go over to the and with that, it is time to go over to the Chud Rotisserie and see what we've got on the menu today. Okay. Now, there's some just shorts, there's some PragerU bullshit shorts that come to mind. There's also a longer PragerU one, where off the wall, like, grifter Pak Yeon-mi, who is a North Korean defector, but and should not be taken as typical of North Korean defectors, as she's just a fucking con artist, basically, and so naturally PragerU fucking loves her. But let me see, what else have we got? Canada, Marcel makes a sacrifice. We've got Fush on the most insufferable political discourse. It won't stop. I mean, that could just be the description of his fucking stream. That is some of the most insufferable political discourse that you could find, certainly. We've got Caleb Muppet in a video essay called "Does MAGA Communism Make Any Sense at All?" 51 minutes long just to say no, I would imagine. But let me see. Let's do why open borders are not compassionate. That's just going to be our starting point for the evening. Oh, there's another thing I gotta fix before we do that. The most insufferable political discourse? Okay, that'll be our main. But first, why open borders are not compassionate. What I'm okay. Anyone want to do an over under on what this is going to be about? I mean, I'm guessing that they're going to pretend that the U.S. has anything resembling open borders, which is cute. That's probably going to be it, and they're going to. I'm also going to say, just right off, they're going to blame things that are entirely attributable to immigration restrictions on the absence of immigration restrictions, even though the immigration restrictions exist. It's going to be some bullshit like that. And I should note, this is something Bernie Sanders sucks just as badly on. He claims that billionaires want open borders. If billionaires wanted fucking open borders, we'd have them. I mean, why is that the one thing where billionaires apparently don't get what they want?
This is a death sentence to make this journey.
They're overrun. It is.
Well, yeah, why do you think they're making the journey then, if it's so dangerous?
Not sustainable.
What we need is enforcement of laws and common sense policy.
Well, that's very specific. We'll turn that down a bit.
Since 2020, there have been over 4.5 million migrant encounters at the southern border.
Okay, see, that number is already quite suspicious. Because that makes it sound like that, the way they're going to spin this, I'm sure, is this is how many people have actually crossed the border and have now entered the country. But that is extremely unlikely. Migrant encounters actually rather strong. I mean, encounters means encounters with CBP, which are the people who are responsible for the mass graves in the border zone. Who basically have zero oversight and can do whatever the fuck they want to the refugees who risk their lives trying to cross the border because, mostly because they're fleeing regimes that the U.S. imposed on them. But okay, so 4.5 million refugees had the misfortune of encountering CBP.
This is larger than the population of Los Angeles, California. DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas claims our border is secure.
Those two things do not contradict each other.
Border is closed, the border is secure.
Yeah, and notice, just to be clear, I mean, they're attacking this policy. This is the Trump border policy. He has actually, Biden's administration has not done anything to improve the atrocity that was Trump's border policy. He's kept it in place.
But this couldn't be further from the truth. People who defend our open border claim borders are racist.
People who defend our open border, okay. People who defend our open border claim borders are racist. There's so many, that is a fascinating combination of bullshit here. Because first of all, we have the idea that the U.S. has an open border. The U.S. has a ridiculously militarized border, which is why so many fucking people die trying to cross it. And it's even less open than it's been in a very long time, because Biden has maintained the illegal Trump policy of not letting refugees into the country. Not letting them in at all. They have to wait in the places they're trying to get away from, risking their lives, for the U.S. to fucking process their applications, which can take years. And if they're fleeing from someplace that the U.S. supports, chances are the U.S. is not even going to pretend to give them a proper process, determination. They'll just say, yeah, fuck you, you're going back. So the idea is that the people who defend existing border policy in the U.S. claim borders are racist. But and people who would say borders are racist would probably not be particularly thrilled with the current U.S. border policy.
They claim that open borders are compassionate. But is this really true? We couldn't take their word for it, so we traveled to the southern border to see for ourselves.
Okay, they claim that open borders are compassionate. I don't actually think that anyone's using these terms. I've never heard anyone say open borders are compassionate. And literally no one I've ever heard who advocates for open borders points to what the monstrosity in the southern United States as an example of one. I mean, how, like, okay, yeah, see how open this border is? Look at the big fucking wall. Doesn't that look very open? That's taller than the Berlin Wall. So obviously it's an open border. I mean, nothing says open like a big fucking wall.
Guys, we're in Eagle Pass right now where we're experiencing firsthand.
Oh, yeah, good look at that. Okay, first of all, PragerU personnel, that's cute. And look, they got their little snacktical vests because it's the border. They have to, it's a fucking war zone. It's Mad Max. I don't think those things even have the metal plating. It's just the shell. Because see, the reason they're doing this is because it's dangerous. So they have to wear these. I mean, just look at how small they are too. Like, if they actually were worried about gunfire, look at just how much of the center of mass can actually be hit under these tiny little fucking tactical bibs. God, yeah, that's adorable.
And the humanitarian crisis that is going on our southern border.
What's happening on our border is absolutely inexcusable. I'm talking about lawlessness.
Lawlessness. So you're talking about how refugees are not being allowed into the U.S. in order to process their refugee claims as international law requires.
Poverty, murder, the whole 9 yards.
We've got a lot of folks that are
it's mostly
alive who have no way, no system, no friends, no parents, no family to take care of them.
A former Border Patrol talking about how much he cares about unaccompanied minors. Like, never mind that a lot of the reason that a lot of these minors are unaccompanied is because Border Patrol abducts their fucking parents or just kills them. They are de-accompanied.
They arrive traumatized and they end up in the street.
Yeah, they arrive traumatized because they're fleeing traumatic shit.
And how is that humane?
If you could see that...
What the hell? How is that humane? Nobody's saying that that's humane. Literally, who's saying that this is... I mean, the only person I've ever heard argue that this current system, the way this is done, is humane. Well, I mean, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, they've both claimed it's humane. But... like, they also don't pretend that these are open border. I mean, maybe Trump, I bet Trump has, but, I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, they keep showing the fucking wall and talking about how the borders are open.
Shipping container right there, that's where they keep the deceased. That one right there next to the building. If they have their ID documents on them, and we can notify their consulate, so at least let their family know. But the downside of that...
yeah, I like how, because if there's one person that we can just trust to take at his word around people who are found dead at the border, it's one of the guys who works for the agency that is responsible, that runs around with guns on the border.
That is, the families don't have money to transport their loved one back home. So what winds up happening is we have to, a lot of times, inter them here locally.
You couldn't... Okay, so they kill them, let's just say, in one way or another. Because even if they aren't actually shooting them, which does happen, one of the things CBP does is they're humanitarian aid workers who are leaving food drops and water drops in areas where people are known to be present when they're crossing the border, so that they don't get dehydrated, so they don't fucking starve. And one of the things CBP likes to do is ruin that stuff or just take it away and prosecute people for providing it. So, yeah, they are responsible for those deaths. The absolute least they could do is pay to fucking repatriate the fucking bodies. And he's acting like, oh, this is... I mean, he feels so bad about it, isn't it? He feels so bad about it, clearly.
in our local county cemetery, and unfortunately they just get a pauper's grave.
The coyotes, they don't care at all. They'll wait until after they've already made it to Houston, or after they've made it to where they're going, or after they've been caught by law enforcement. Then they'll say, hey, we left this person behind at this location.
Now, why do you think that is that there are these coyotes who are in charge of getting people across the border? Why do people need to do that? I mean, that's sort of a strange thing. If the borders are open, surely they can just kind of cross. They wouldn't need any help. They could just walk across and it would be fine, right? If the borders are open, I mean.
And he was either already dead or he was almost dead. And that'll be days later. People are just getting left behind to die.
Also, like, why are we talking to a fucking rancher? Who gives a shit what a rancher thinks? Like, can we maybe talk to some of the people who they're saying it's more compassionate to make it even more dangerous for them to try to get to relative safety?
All the time, every day. As if nobody knows about it, then you can't do anything about it, right?
So, I mean, obviously the thing to do would be to make sure that there's adequate food and water and shelter for people on the way so that they don't have to, and maybe give them a free ride. Maybe organize buses so they can get across. So that people aren't dying and taking these more dangerous routes, which they're forced to do because of the various generations of walls that exist to block off the safer areas.
We had 17 people die in the desert because of the...
Oh, well, I mean, and again, a cop. There's absolutely no reason we could possibly doubt what a fucking county sheriff, Bad Cleveland, that's like a bad detective novel character. Because they, cops, of course, do not have any form for murdering people and lying about it.
Illegal aliens crossing. I put 15 of those in the body bag myself. Wow. What's hard about our job is when you start dealing with women and children that are being trafficked across the border, being smuggled across the border. That's what's hard about our job, is seeing that daily.
Well, yeah, and again, why do they have to be smuggled? I thought the borders were open. This is confusing. I mean, they said that the U.S. has open borders, but they keep showing this wall. And now, apparently, the only way to get across is to be smuggled, and there are all these fucking Border Patrol people, and everybody fucking dies on the way. It's sounding like the border's not very open, actually.
They're humans, too. Yeah. They're no different than me and you. They're coming...
Well, yeah, except that if you find one who's alive, you will immediately kick them back
to the United States because they want to come and for economic reasons and work.
Right now we're at the Kinney County Sheriff Department. We're right next to some private land where they say they're looking for a mother and her child. They're looking for after a bailout. When these migrants are caught, they bail out of the car, they hop...
Yeah, they're caught. I thought there were open borders. Who's catching them?
The fence on a private property. While they're looking for this mother and her suspected child, they're also...
Her suspected child? Like what? What the hell is a suspected child?
Still looking for somebody who's suspected to be armed and dangerous, has affiliations with the cartel.
Oh, well, I mean, you are standing around a bunch of Border Patrol people. Those motherfuckers are armed and dangerous, and notoriously have connections to cartels. There's a reason the coke always gets through. The refugees have trouble, but the blow will always make it.
This is an everyday occurrence for them. This is something that happens all the time. And it's pretty wild that you have these migrants, these families, these mothers and children who are really in the same bunch as these armed and dangerous criminals.
Yeah, it's really wild. I wonder why that happens if the borders are open.
We just got finished up with the Kinney County Sheriff Department. We were out there for a couple hours and they were still unable to find this mom and her suspected child.
Her suspected child again. Also good. I hope that they escaped and I hope they found a safe place to be. I hope they are far away from this bullshit and far away from these two assholes. And in relative safety. I hope they got away. And including the suspected child, which is apparently a thing that this guy is going to keep fucking saying.
The deputy sheriff was talking about how they routinely find bodies in this stretch of the border because...
Which is so weird, right? Because the border's open, and that means that it shouldn't actually... There's no impediment to getting across.
The heat is so high, a lot of times they don't have water, they don't have food.
Wouldn't it be weird, actually, if they did have water and they did have food, because decent human beings, unlike yourselves, went to considerable personal expense, effort, and risk to put them there so they would have them, and the guys that you're palling around with went and fucking took that away from them? Wouldn't that just be kind of interesting? Maybe that would be something you might want to ask about.
It's wild to think that this mother and her child could be dead any second now.
Yeah, that's wild. I wonder, you know, because it's really wild because the borders are open. How is it possibly dangerous? Surely, if the borders are open, surely she could have just crossed someplace. Where the hell's Kinney County? I've never heard of Kinney County. That's in Texas. Okay. So we're gonna just, I'm gonna pull this up on the map. So, so here we go. Here's Kinney County. And isn't that interesting? Why are they... Okay, so why would they be crossing if the borders are open? Why would they be crossing here of all places? Why on earth would they be... I mean, why wouldn't they go someplace? There are places where the border runs right through communities. If the border is open, why don't they just cross there? Like in Nogales, for example. Which is Nogales on both sides of the border, because the border just was cut through an existing community. Yeah, I mean, it's just right in front of people's fucking front yards. So, if the border's open, why don't they... Oh, that's right, there's a big fucking wall there. Which is a weird thing for an open border to have, am I right?
CBP, if these sheriff officers don't find them,
they would start discarding stuff that they had because they couldn't take so much stuff with them, and you'd find a lot of I'm just gonna say you'd find a lot of condoms alongside the river, and I would interview the women or ask them, why do you have birth control? Why do you have condoms with you? And,
well, I mean, and surely the answer is none of your fucking business. Like, I mean, lots of women have birth control, actually. It's kind of a common thing to have.
And their response is, well, if we're going to be sexually assaulted, at least we have protection. We can ask the man at least, wear a condom to either prevent a pregnancy or a sexually transmitted disease.
Yeah, which again, I mean, this is such a weird risk to be taking when the border's open. They could just kind of walk over. Which, I mean, they keep on saying the borders are open, but, I mean, this sounds like they're really actually not.
A lot of women, they're traveling with their children, on their own. They'll be looking for some type of safety, so they'll look to the men in the group, say, hey, well, if I stay with you, will you take care of me? And they don't have anything to give them, so they offer themselves.
Again, which is just totally the way it works when a border is... Like, for example, when... There's an open border between Germany and Austria, a border I have crossed a number of times. And obviously, since there's an open border, I can't just go across at Rosenheim and just walk over past the sign that says, now you're entering the Federal Republic of Germany, or now you're entering the Federal Republic of Austria. Obviously, I have to find the most fucking dangerous part of the mountains in the Alps, and... just trust my luck, because it's open borders, and that means that you can't go the safe way. Like, I mean, this propaganda, it is amazing to me that this is the line they keep. Like, because they're literally showing us. They're literally fucking showing us how not open these borders are. They keep showing us the fucking wall. They keep showing us all the people who are there to stop you because the borders are actually really fucking closed.
Basically, they take women and young girls and tie them to the tree and rape them right there, down in the Darien Gap.
Jesus, I'm sorry. I've not seen this before, so let me just say, okay, content warning. This is going to be over fairly soon, so yeah. But yeah, I'm sure that the cops never do that.
They're providing women with what they call rape kits. In the event they get raped, it'll prevent them from getting pregnant, it'll prevent them from getting an STD. And there's various spots from the Darien Gap in.
Yeah, okay, the Darien Gap is not something on the U.S. border at all. Although the U.S. actually, it's in Central America, and it's an area that the U.S. basically treats as its own. The Darien Gap is where if you're crossing from trying to get north from Colombia by the land route, there is an area of just basically untouched wilderness with no roads, no transport, no highway, nothing that you have to get through in order to get from Colombia to Panama. And a lot of people don't make it. Because, I mean, it's wilderness. It is fucking wilderness. And there are no services. There isn't some place you can pop over to get food. Belén Fernandez did a piece. She interviewed a bunch of people who were crossing the Darien Gap to talk to them about their experiences. I think it's on Al Jazeera English. But, yeah, when they're talking about this Darien Gap, not Darien Gap, motherfucker. Darien, with an accent on the fucking E. Gap. What they're talking about is an area between that connects Colombia to Panama.
Up through Central America into Mexico, where they can replenish these supplies.
To think that
Darien, okay, so he doesn't know where the fucking Darien Gaps is, because it is not from Central America into Mexico. It is from South America into Central America.
Somebody is bringing their child through all of this. As an average everyday American, we can't even comprehend the types of things that 4 or 5-year-old child was exposed to.
Well, maybe, I bet you it might be a neat kind of little exercise for you to do, just consciousness building exercise, to wonder why it is that somebody's taking that kind of a risk. Because it sounds like maybe it's pretty, I mean, if you're going to take that kind of a risk to get someplace, it sounds like it would have been even more risky to stay where you were in the first place.
Via the cartel or other nations' border crossings getting from Venezuela to here. Because from a humanitarian standpoint, this is a death sentence to make this journey.
Yeah, which, because it's an open border, It's an open border, which is why it's so dangerous to cross it.
So if that is the argument, right, we should be shutting the border down immediately.
It would be difficult to shut it down more than it already is, actually.
We're putting these people's lives in danger. Our government is.
The liberals need to understand that these tragedies are a direct result of them encouraging people to come.
They're not, encouraging people. Nobody's encouraging people. What's encouraging people is that the situation that they're trying to get away from back home is intolerable or unsurvivable. Nobody's encouraging people. Like, there isn't, I mean, and certainly the legal system as it exists does not encourage people, because it is fucking impossible. As just a normal working class person with a passport from someplace in Latin America, unless you are extremely lucky and get to have some sort of sponsor, or maybe like a professional sports team decides to recruit you or some shit, you're basically never going to you're basically never going to get a fucking green card. It is more or less a given. If you have money, then you can get in. There are specific visas for rich people. That's not a specifically U.S. thing. Pretty much every country has rich people visas. In Britain, there's a visa where the only real qualification is that you bring at least £2 million with you and invest half of that in government securities. There are specific rich people visas. So the question that really does come to mind, how is that encouraging people if there is absolutely no legal route? And it is fucking mortally dangerous to, claiming asylum, you are allowed to cross any border. The whole point of asylum is that even if you have absolutely no legal right to be where you are, asylum gives you a fallback position because it's illegal to send people back to places where they're going to be persecuted or tortured or murdered.
Uncontrolled and illegally in the United States.
Yeah.
They would not suffer if they came in a controlled manner.
They would not suffer if they came in a controlled manner. This guy's ex-border patrol. He knows that that's a lie. Because if they came in a controlled manner, if they presented their papers to, the border crossing from Tijuana to San Diego, from Juarez to San Antonio, or is it El Paso? I don't remember. They go, this is how that would work. You walk in, you say, okay, I'd like to come into the U.S., and stay here. And then the CBP agent looks at your papers, looks at you, says, fuck you, go away. That's what happens if you go in a controlled manner. Because there is no fucking legal option for most people in the world to get into the country. Even as tourists, I should note.
There would not be the rape of children. There would not be the exploitation of women.
But all of those things happen. They're about as discouraged as they could possibly be. Created a fucking border where hundreds of people a year die trying to get across it. It sounds like when you've got a border where hundreds of people a year die trying to get across it, that sounds like it's being pretty heavily discouraged, actually.
There would not be the separation of families. That never...
The separation of families, it's worth noting, is a thing that remains the official policy of the U.S. government. People care about the separation of families. They need to just look the other way when people cross. Or better yet, just provide them with fucking food. People do not choose the most dangerous way to cross the U.S. border because there are so many fucking options.
What happens when people come to the United States legally? They would not have suffered if they had come legally, but that would have taken time.
Yeah, it would have taken time. Yeah, it would have taken basically forever. Because most of these people have absolutely no chance of ever getting a green card. And if they decide to have the diversity lottery, they could be waiting literally 20 years. They could be waiting decades. And the whole point, it's worth noting, of asylum is that when you're running for your life, you're in kind of a little bit of a time crunch there. And so you get to jump the queue. Because you're in a time crunch, because you might die if you don't get in. And so, they're just sitting here pretending that, asylum doesn't exist, even though a lot of the people who are crossing, the reason they're taking this risk is that it is riskier to stay where they were. Which is what asylum is for.
People just want to get here quickly.
A country without borders isn't a country at all. For the sake of Americans and migrants alike, it's time we finally do the real compassionate thing and secure our southern border for good.
Well, okay, and so what happens what is for good? Because apparently the multiple walls, all the soldiers, all the goons with guns, and all that shit, that isn't securing it for good. What are we going to do? Add a moat? Yeah, a minefield? What are you going to do? Because people are still going to fucking cross it. People are still going to try to fucking cross it, so maybe the compassionate thing would be to just really open the border? Since we're being compassionate, they want to be compassionate. So, maybe the thing would be to just get rid of all the CBP and maybe just get rid of all these walls and let them cross in the safe places in the middle of cities and greet them with a fucking cup of coffee and a place to take a shower and sit down and have a rest. I mean, but maybe their way might also be compassionate. The way where they make it even deadlier to cross the border and then call it open, and then say that that's also not deadly enough. Eventually, maybe that's also compassionate in a way. Maybe we have different definitions of compassion, but yeah, Jesus. Okay, that is worthy of a this fucking guy. Everybody they depicted there was a this fucking guy. But okay, there we go. So that's why we learned that the U.S. border would see what an open border looks like is a border with a huge amounts of fences and motherfuckers with guns trying to stop people, where the only way to even attempt to get across is to go through uninhabited desert areas. But okay, so the most insufferable political discourse, or does MAGA communism make any sense at all? I mean, it doesn't. Okay, let's do. Okay, we're doing Vush. Fuck it. And let me just give a. I'm gonna give a preemptive TFG here. I'm proud of myself for making that.
All right, listen up. Okay?
No.
It's been a long time since I've done something this strictly informational, but
in fact, you've never done anything that could strictly be considered informational because you're not in possession of any information.
I really need to talk about this, okay? Because I'm tired of seeing people talk about it and I can't do it anymore, all right? I want to talk about the debt limit. Are there other videos you can watch on YouTube that'll explain this to you? Yes.
Okay. Let's see what he actually said. Because, okay, as I was saying earlier, the point about the debt ceiling is that the U.S. literally cannot default. It is a legal impossibility because the 14th Amendment, Section 4, explicitly says the sovereign debt of the U.S. has to be honored. And no matter what it takes, which means if that means like minting a coin, which under the U.S. Mint Act, it can be done in any denomination just unilaterally by the executive branch, then they do that. If it means, selling off the Pentagon, well, then we celebrate because then there's the Pentagon sold off, and that's good.
Will you be able to look at my face while having it explained to you in these other videos? Yeah.
That actually that makes the other videos seem more attractive.
As long as you have their audio playing in a separate tab, but you're looking at me during that. So if you want to, you can do that. Mute me and go listen to them. They'll probably know more than me because they're all a bunch of neoliberals. They're all smart. They're all...
It's interesting that he says that neoliberals know more than him. I mean, because he definitely does seem to look up to neoliberalism. I mean, we saw that in that last video of his we looked at.
Smarty pants is, but you can look at my face, whatever. You do what you want to do, okay? Look, the debt limit discourse is happening again. For those of you who don't know, I swear to God, I am going to get a subscription to the Washington Post. So for those of you who don't know, okay, here's the way it works. They're talking about the debt limit again. So basically, in the United States, we've got a really, really, really cool system, okay?
Okay, let's see. Does he... Okay, we've got a really, really cool system. Let's see if he can explain it. Let's see if he can manage to get the basics right.
So, the... every year, a budget is drafted, okay, by Congress. It goes through a billion processes, whatever. They sign, it propose, sign, whatever, signed a law, okay? You've got a budget. The budget is now happening. Great. The budget is exacting and precise, even though a lot of money gets...
Well, it's not that precise because, I mean, the Pentagon gets a huge amount of money that's not accounted for in it.
It's lost in it, especially to the Pentagon, all right? The budget also seems to keep increasing, especially to the Pentagon. Who could have guessed? Whatever. Now... Once you've signed the budget into law, you got to follow it, which means spending money. That's how budgets work. And
yeah, except the U.S. regularly does not follow that law. Like, huge amounts of money in COVID relief has never been dispersed. It has never been allocated to anything. It's just sitting there. They're sitting on it.
while following your legal obligation to spend money in accordance with that budget, you might run up against a wall, you know? What wall, I hear you ask? The wall at the southern border? No, my friends, this wall is
The border that we just learned was open.
the debt ceiling.
No, that's not... Okay, that's not what the debt ceiling is. Okay. I was worried that this was going to turn out to be one where he manages to get basic things right. But he's not. Because the debt ceiling is not about new spending. It is about servicing existing debt. It is about paying the debts the U.S. already has. The debt ceiling does not affect what's in the new budget. It affects any indebtedness that was incurred over, during previous fiscal years.
It is the limit on the total amount of money the U.S. government is allowed to borrow. The total.
No, that is not what it is. It is literally not that. It is the limit on the amount of money that the U.S. government is going to allocate to servicing existing debt.
Amount of debt we're allowed to be in.
No, it fucking isn't. Okay.
And past that point, once you go past that amount, you can no longer borrow money. Which means in practice, because you've already run up to that point in the budget and are currently borrowing money, you can't spend money.
No, this is none of this. Jesus, this is I'm beginning to long for the standards of accuracy of that PragerU video. This is every single thing he said is just absolute nonsense. He clearly has not bothered to look into this at all.
Does anyone remember that time a couple years ago where all the parks shut down for a little while because Congress was having another kerfuffle about raising the debt ceiling?
No, that was actually just a government shutdown. They wouldn't pass a budget. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, the reason that a lot of people already knew that the debt ceiling thing was a complete bluff this time is because we went through it during the Obama years. That was, to my knowledge, at least the first time I can remember the debt ceiling being the bluff. And there's this whole discourse about, oh shit, the U.S. is going to default, the U.S. is going to default. And then people pointed out, yeah, actually, no. The U.S. literally can't default because the 14th Amendment forbids it. If the U.S. runs out of money to pay debts and still has debts that have matured and therefore need to be paid immediately, then they just need to suck it up and either sell assets or coin money. Either of those options, because the thing about owing people money when you can literally create money out of thin air is that you can just create money out of thin air, which is a very useful thing when you owe people money.
You remember that? Like, there was a little period of time during which, like, everything shut down. Here, let me see. Debt limit, parks shut down. This was one of the worst debt limit.
And the thing is, the whole thing was just bullshit. The whole reason, what happens is, in these situations, when the Democrats are in the White House, they are more or less guaranteed to lose one or both houses of Congress. This puts them in a situation they actually are kind of comfortable in, because now they have an excuse not to do anything good. And instead, what they need is an excuse to do bad things with their friends, the Republicans. And the way that happens is there's a government shutdown, under Obama, the debt ceiling bluff was used. Because the idea is you create this crisis, and we have to, as much as it pains us to cut the things that some of us have been saying all our careers that we just love to cut. Like Biden has been saying about Social Security since the 1980s. But we have to, because otherwise the Republicans are going to cause us to go off a fiscal cliff. That was the term that they used the last time they pulled this bullshit. And the thing is, it doesn't work that way. And the whole reason that people think, the whole reason this bluff is effective is that most people do not know more about this than Vosh does. They think that this is about existing spending, that this is about new spending and new debt. And it's not. It is about existing indebtedness. It's about servicing the money you already owe.
Kerfuffles in recent memories. At least I don't remember one that was more I don't remember one that got to that point.
Oh, well, I mean, it's the one under Obama wasn't the first one by any means. It happened under Clinton. And actually, Clinton was, it was going to be this big grand bargain with the Republicans, which was going to include, Social Security privatization or Social Security cuts at the very least. And then the whole Monica Lewinsky thing went public, and he had to, and the Republicans tried to impeach him, and he had to sort of seek refuge in the less ghoulish wing of his party, who would not, were totally against cutting Social Security for absolutely no good reason, because Social Security does not actually contribute even 1 penny to the debt. It's a separate funding stream. But he had to back down from that. So Monica Lewinsky kind of saved Social Security from Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich. But so this sort of thing of creating these bullshit crises in order to justify horrible right-wing budgets is actually kind of a standard move by now.
When I was younger, at least. See, now I try to Google debt limit park shutdown, and now they're just talking about the current debt limit fight. Always and always and always.
Because he doesn't know how to Google.
They talk about this. Look, here's an NPR article, okay? This is from May 2nd. It's a chart on the U.S. debt. Where's the word that I saw in the Google preview? Give it to me. There it is. The fight over the debt ceiling could sink the economy. This is how we got here. All you have to do, every time the January 2019 ceiling fight was the longest government shutdown in history. Yeah, okay, there we go. Remember, it was the longest in history. It was a long, long time. Debt and deficit aren't the same. No, they're not the same.
Yeah, okay, somebody in chat is pointing this out to him, because he was acting like this was, that the debt ceiling is about deficit spending, and it's not.
Every time this discourse happens, okay? To be clear, the debt limit fight, this fight over, like, will they, won't they raise the debt ceiling to allow the government to continue to borrow money to
that's not what it is
spend
again.
money to fulfill its budgetary promises. This is a completely artificial, it's theater. It's an artificial battle. All it is people leveraging an inevitable consequence of a budget they already signed into law to try to get some other thing passed. This argument over, we've...
Wait a second. Okay. Yes. I wasn't sure, because a lot of the time this is done in order to delay passing a budget. In other situations, this has specifically been a way to stop a budget being passed.
Spent so much money, we can't raise the debt ceiling further. The people saying that voted on the budget that led to this. There's no,
God.
This isn't surprising at all. This is like
yeah, no, it's not surprising. The whole idea, okay, even if we just go at the surface level and we ignore the fact that this actually is, that defaulting is a legal impossibility for the U.S. The U.S. simply can't do it. And I mean, there's no reason the U.S. would do it, because the U.S. can just make fucking money. But leaving aside, the whole idea is that supposedly the Republicans say, look, we're not going to raise the debt ceiling, and the U.S. is going to default if you don't do all these things we want you to do. And then deep down we know you kind of like to do as well. And the Democrats say, oh wow, you have overpowered us. We are outflanked by your masterful brinkmanship, and so we are going to reluctantly cut the shit out of Social Security, kick people off Medicaid, and just watch a lot of people starve. But the thing is, the reason it's about the threat is the threat of default, i.e., not paying debt that's already debt, not stopping new debt.
A completely, it's not even expected. It's inevitable. When you sign the budget, you can literally see, well, how much money is going to get spent? Where's the current debt ceiling? Okay, if we vote on this budget, if we vote yes on this budget, it will hit the debt ceiling here. That's
God, see, we've established he doesn't know how to Google things. But isn't it interesting how he clearly he just hasn't really read anything about this? Like,
Why people know this, that's why this happens every single year. It's a feature, not a bug. It is one of the most overt, if not the most overt, examples of political theatrics in American politics.
yeah, I mean, he's not wrong about that part. That part he is right about. It is theater. He's completely wrong about what the debt ceiling is, how the debt ceiling gets established and raised, and what the debt ceiling does not prevent the government from doing. He's totally wrong about all of that. But it is theater. It's complete bullshit. Because it is a threat that simply cannot be made good on, because even if the U.S. were to say, oh, we can't pay off our bondholders, which they're not going to do. They're not going to screw over bondholders. I mean, some of the biggest institutional investors on the planet, the people that they basically make policy for a lot of the time, they're not going to screw those people over. But, and aside from that, they can't because of the 14th Amendment. Because if they did say, oh, we can't pay out on your bond because debt ceiling, they would go to court and they would say, yeah, the 14th Amendment says they have to pay us. And the court would say, well, golly gee, yes, indeed it does. I'm ordering the feds to pay you, and if they have to use their powers under the U.S. Mint Act, or, sell off a few F-16s or some bullshit, then they're going to have to do that, but you're going to get paid. Because the U.S. is not a country that can do... Other countries do have the authority to default. It isn't taken away from them by their constitutions. The U.S. is not one of those countries, which is why it is such nonsense.
You know how... Why did I hit that button? You know how, edgy teenagers talk...
Yeah, I'm watching one right now.
About how, the left and the right are the same, and how, all of government is just this, petty theater that's meant to distract the people. I generally disagree with that. I think that there are very complicated socio-political forces that motivate political action.
And see, this is... God. Yeah, see, he just has phrases like this, and it makes ignorant people think that he actually knows what he's talking about.
Even when politicians are consistently dishonest, it's very rarely as simple as they're all playing a game. In this instance, it is actually that simple.
And in a number of instances, because there's this whole thing where they will act like they're the worst enemy. Look, you can't let these motherfuckers get into power. You gotta vote for us no matter how much we suck, because you can't let these motherfuckers get into power. They're awful. And then inevitably it turns out of course they play golf together. Of course they vote together on a lot of things. Because actually they agree with each other more than they agree with most of the population.
It is completely and fully that simple. So people say, well, why don't we rein in the budget? Why don't we stop spending so much? To which I say, of course, okay, well, you be the one to vote on cutting the Pentagon's budget in half. Which not...
why in half? Why don't we just... let's just defund that shit. I mean, imagine the stuff that we could do if we just reduce the Pentagon spending to the spending level of the number 2 country in the world in military spending. Who is that these days? Okay, who's number 2? Number 2 is China. The U.S. Official defense spending, military spending for 2023 is $750 billion. Number 2 is China at $237 billion, and number 3 is Saudi Arabia, who is completely dependent actually on U.S. military aid at $67.60 billion. So I mean, just imagine all the shit that could be done if the U.S. were to drop military spending down to just the relatively small amount China spends on it, for example. Think of all the stuff that could be paid for with the cash that would be raised by doing that.
None of them will do, so this is going to keep happening. But I also want to say, people get really mad about our debt. Oh, we're spending so much money. Oh, the number is so high.
Who gives a shit?
$30.9 trillion. Oh, it's so sad.
And budget surpluses are not something to be happy
debt
about, incidentally.
It's not a bad thing. I know that sounds crazy, but it really depends on what country you are and what kind of debt it is. So to be clear, sometimes when a country's in debt, it's like a little baby country. Who are they in debt to? They're in debt to us.
A little baby country. I mean, what you're talking about is actually a country that is being extorted by the U.S., usually. Although it's not usually directly to the U.S. I mean, sometimes it is. But usually it's through U.S.-controlled financial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank.
Is that bad for them?
Yes.
Yes. It's very bad. We will install a fascist dictator to ensure compliance with our business interests.
Well, this is the guy who was just on about, slagging off Hassan for starting from the presumption that the U.S. is not up to no good in the world, and here he is just casually saying, yeah, of course the U.S. will install a fascist dictatorship in a country that doesn't do what the U.S. tells it to do.
But when debt is held by a powerful country like us, especially a country that...
Okay, that's not what when you hold debt, that means that somebody owes you. When you owe somebody, that's not holding debt.
Is the case with us, represents the global reserve currency, the US dollar, the global reserve currency, meaning that we are literally the base level against which the economies of every country on earth are compared. Remember the 2008 financial crisis, which ended up collapsing the world economy, even though it was about American investment in...
Not exclusively, actually, because, most countries did not deregulate their financial sector to the same extent as the U.S. did. But a lot of other banks also were doing all sorts of dodgy shit, and also on the same model of this is going to be bad for whoever ends up holding it when it's time to cash in because there's no cash there. But, we can just keep kind of passing the potato forever.
American mortgages. It was gambling on mortgage loans in America, but then it collapses the world economy. Reserve currency. We are the economy.
Well, no, that's not actually... Those are related, but not the same thing. God, it's like... He was sitting here talking about... the last time we saw this motherfucker, he was on about how Thought Slime just doesn't know anything about economics because Thought Slime doesn't think that the profit motive is the only reason anything gets done. And now he's sitting here, he just doesn't know anything about any of the concepts that he's brought up. Literally the one thing that he's gotten right is that the whole debt ceiling thing is theater, and it is. It's a bipartisan bluff.
And as a consequence of that, it means that every country in the world is invested in the strength of the US dollar. There is no country that wants to ruin America's economy.
Well, actually, there are countries competing with, there are competing reserve currencies. Like the euro and the yuan are both competitors of the US dollar as a reserve currency. I think the euro is actually kind of the interest in the euro has actually kind of fallen a bit as an alternative reserve currency, but certainly the yuan is an option that is being considered as well. It's not the U.S. The thing is, the U.S. is not really the only game in town. It's just the main game in town, and if you try to switch over to another game, the U.S. will probably have words with you.
Sometimes they might posture, like China sometimes does this, trade war gesturing, but in reality they don't.
It's usually the other way around. Usually it's the U.S. doing trade war gesturing and claiming to give a shit about human rights in China, even though everybody knows if you sanction China, you are sanctioning Wall Street, which is why that's never going to happen.
Collapsing the world economy will always collapse the global economy. There's no localized America. I guess like yeah, Russia might be one of the few exceptions purely because Russia is so sanctioned and so like isolated that it can't like it's already dying, you see. Russia having an interest in collapsing our economy doesn't mean it wouldn't hurt them. It would. It just means that, they're already dying and they want to lash out at us in the last.
The thing is, I don't think, it depends what collapsing the economy. You see, he uses these terms. He doesn't know what they mean. Like, you can't just talk about collapsing the economy. Because the economy is a whole lot of moving parts. There are all sorts of relationships and conflicts of interest going on. And so, if, for example, the financial sector collapses, that doesn't actually mean there's less stuff than there was the day before. It just means that a whole lot of banks are suddenly overextended, and it screwed a whole lot of people out of potentially out of their bank accounts. But the stuff is still there. So I mean, when you say the economy is crashed, it's actually, I mean, that's hello and guara como tai. That is actually something you have to pick apart a little bit.
Last second. Cuba, we're already embargoing. Okay, you know what I mean, the global economy. It's not a good process for anyone to see the US dollar tank. And the United States government...
Well, actually, see, there's a difference between the US dollar tanking. Actually, God, he doesn't know anything. Este weón tan ignorante, weón, este pelotudo. Because here's the thing. Let's say you're in Argentina. Let's say you're in Chile. And right now, I mean, Chile, the fucking dollar has shot up in relation to the Chilean peso. Like, it used to be that it was like 2,000 pesos to $1. And now it's like several times that. It's a disaster. If the dollar tanks, suddenly the peso's going to be, unless the peso tanks along with it, suddenly the peso's going to be worth a lot more. And since every single budget amount, every single line item, every single debt, and anything that matters, basically, in the economies of places like Latin America or Africa or, Asia, is, if they don't have hard currency, it's denominated in dollars. So actually everybody has a bit of an interest in the dollar tanking, because if you suddenly have a situation where in Chile you go from, say, 3,000 pesos to the dollar to like 50 pesos to the dollar, suddenly imports just got extremely cheap. And, paying off fucking foreign debt to the US, any dollar-denominated debt, just got a lot easier. I mean, that's the thing. It all depends on it depends on whether you've got your income is in dollars and you're paying in another currency, or whether your income's in another currency and you're paying in dollars. Like, for example, it was actually the disaster with the pound sterling in Britain over all the Brexit shit actually ended up not being all that bad for me on a certain level when I was in Britain, because I was getting paid in dollars and the pound was tanking relative to the dollar, which meant my rent, in terms of the amount I was actually paying in my dollar-denominated bank account, was going down from month to month. So yeah, actually people do have an interest in these currencies tanking. I mean, if the dollar tanks relative to like the peso in Argentina, fucking celebrate. Oh, we're not bad, and actually it looks like I need to be wrapping up. It's already 1 a.m. But I mean, este weón es tan ignorante que da pena casi. Da casi vergüenza ajena. It's the most cringe. You just missed some more Vosh Icona cringe. That's what we'll call this sort of shit. But okay, thank you for everyone who's joining. I will be back tomorrow night at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. I look forward to seeing you there. And amazingly, my camera has cooperated the whole time. It didn't do that this afternoon. My camera's a nocturnal too, apparently. If you enjoy the stream, please consider paying for the stream. And the best way to do that at the moment, as far as I'm concerned, is by making a direct contribution, by leaving a tip, which also will contribute. It'll be counted towards my current crowdfunded translation project of Alexandra Kollontais' Social Basis of the Female Question. And you can make a direct contribution if you want to by going to that link. And if you can't or you don't want to, I don't want to put any pressure on you. I know how rough things are. Things aren't great for me at the moment either. So nobody should feel bad if they... That's how the best way to do it at the moment. Have a good night. Thank you for coming, and I will see you tomorrow.